What's going on, people? We are live with the MMA Mainstream Podcast. I'm James, flying solo this time, but I have guests joining us. Have Matthew Wildchild Martinez. Man, how you doing?
Good, man. I'm glad to be here, James. Thank you for having me.
So you're going to be competing at 559 Fights 100 in Visalia. I want to say this next weekend.
Yes.
How exciting is it a big deal for you competing on their 100th card? UFC's done it. Bellator's done it. I don't know of any amateur shows that have ever made it to 100. And is this a big deal for the amateur fighters? Like, are you excited about this?
Yeah, dude. Honestly, I was looking forward to fighting on the 100 card ever since my third fight, which was the 96 card. And some things happened, and I had like an injury, and I was bouncing back. I had a nose fracture, and it was something that had nothing to do with fighting. Is actually really stupid. Just a series of unfortunate events. And after I recovered, I thought I was gonna maybe fight on the 100 card. I was talking to Jeremy about maybe being booked, but he never texted me, and I never ended up getting a bout. So I was like, whatever. I might be on just the 101 card instead of the 100th. So I just kept my head down, kept working hard, and eventually it was 2 weeks out from the 100 card, and my buddy Mark Hernandez, it's really a freak accident, man. He just got injured. He has like a contusion in his ribs, so it was like a last minute thing, man. Someone had to fill his spot, and I was like, damn, I guess I am gonna fight on the 100 card. My coach was telling me like, hey, just be ready, man. You might have to take his spot because he's also a 145 pounder. And I want to fight at bantamweight professionally. I don't mind doing it in amateurs either. Honestly, if it sounds right, if the fight is right, I'll take it. But yeah, I'm open to taking featherweight and bantamweight fights, and my coach knows that. So whenever Mark was injured, he was telling me like, hey man, like if it's bad enough, if his injury is that bad, you might have to cover for him. And I was like, shit, well, it's a shitty circumstance, but if I have to take the fight, I will. And here we are. I'm fighting on the 100 card,
It's messed up what happened to your teammate, but it's also super convenient to have somebody at 145 that you just be like, oh, I got this guy. Let him step in. Here you go.
Exactly, because I'm not really the type to overindulge on food or nothing. I'm kind of strict on what I eat. So my coach knows that I always float around at 160. I'm not like, I don't necessarily put on a crazy amount of body fat whenever I'm not fighting. So I just knew that, that 15-pound cut's nothing. It's not hard at all. So I was open and I was ready.
So in your preparation for this fight, seeing as how it was 2 weeks out when you got it, how have you've been training? Oh, is it going to come back? There he is.
I'm good.
All right. You've been training. Do you do any research into who you're fighting, or you hear their record and you're like, all right, well, go get it?
I kind of base the way I'm going to fight my opponent. I base it off of whatever my coach tells me. I take his word for it. And I've obviously watched his fights, but as an amateur, I just know that they're constantly changing. I'm constantly changing. So even if he displays one thing, or whoever I'm fighting, if they display one thing in previous fights, I know that it's probably not going to be the same. I mean, obviously they might still have the same kind of game plan. They might want to wrestle. If a guy's a striker, he might want to strike, but they're not always going to have the same telltale signs. They're not always going to have the same habits in their fights, because as an amateur fighter, especially when you've only had like 5 or less fights, even 7 or less fights, you're still constantly changing. I think once you get to the big leagues is when people develop a totally different fight mindset and mentality, and they really start changing, and that's when you really got to start studying up on their game. But either way, I still watch his fights, but I don't take everything to I don't take it all as, I don't watch his fights and think, oh, that's exactly how he's going to perform. I just kind of keep it in the back of my mind that, he's probably going to want to wrestle. I have been working on my ground game, so I'm not worried about that now as much as I was in the past. My third fight, I kind of I went through it. The guy was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and ever since then, he put it in my head like, damn, dude, what have you been doing? You're over here training kickboxing and Muay Thai, but there's people that are actually very well equipped in jiu-jitsu. So I'm just, now that I know my ground game is much better than it was last December, I think is when I fought, I'm not really worried about whatever his fight game or plan may be, which is probably going to be wrestling. So all I know is that I'm fighting a wrestler, and my ground game is significantly better than it was in the past. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is just being able to stuff his shots, and whatever the case may be, if it does go to the ground, I will get back up, and it's not going to be there very long.
How did you get into MMA?
Damn. Ever since I was like in high school or middle school, I've always watched UFC. I'd say like towards the end of middle school, high school, because my brother would. I was like heavily into just the sport itself, and wanting to develop also myself, like my own physicalities. I was like, I would always watch like skaters too. Whenever I was a kid, I'd implement whatever I watch, and I'd feel like, damn, I could do that. Like, but skating is obviously, there's other risks. Like you could just break something easily. I'm not saying you can't in fighting, but it's like one of those things
The
where,
risk and reward is a lot different in skating. I do know what you mean.
yeah, and I would always watch skaters and be like, damn, I could do that, man. Like, there's no problem. I could do exactly what that skater's doing if I, just in visualize it. And I felt the same way about fighting, man. I started getting older, and I was like, man, I'm naturally athletic. I'm pretty agile. Not to toot my own horn or nothing, but when you are athletic, someone knows when they have the capabilities to do something. So as I was getting older and older, I was done with high school. I stopped wrestling, and I was like, man, I'm still watching UFC. I'm still watching people do great things, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. Just all my abilities are just going to waste. I'm not doing anything with them. And I finally hit 23 years old, I think, and then that's when Bailey from Valley Fight Series, she's been contacting me because I signed up one time on their website because I had this feeling, like always. I was like, man, I want to fight, and I signed up for Valley Fight Series first. I gave them my information. She kept contacting me. I kept putting it off to the side. Also, finances were a problem too. It was like damn near $300 just to be able to fight. That's not including buying your gear. It's like $200 for the medicals and labs, and then the camo state license. So I kept putting it off for finances. Finally, I was like, screw it. I'm just going to save up some money. She texted me, and Bailey got me my first fight. And like I said, I was 23, and I was just tired of putting it off. And I was like, I got to see what this body could do. Cause I was in the gym, man. I was really strict on my diet, my physique, all that shit. So I was like, why am I going to let this go to waste? I'm 23. I'm only getting older. I want to try something. I want to see what I'm capable of. I wasn't even in the gym at the time when Bailey gave me a fight. I was an independent fighter. It's good. I was like, I'm an independent fighter. I'm not worried about what really I know that I'm not going to get paired up with someone who has 7 fights or something. It's going to be an amateur fighter who's probably had no fights, maybe one. So I was like, let me just throw myself in there and see how I come out. And I ended up coming out with the W. I displayed a couple of different skills. I won with submission. I got the takedown. He didn't take me down. I got the takedown. I got some good strikes in. So, yeah, man, ever since that first fight, after I won without even being in the gym, without even having a coach behind me or in my corner, I was like, what could I do if I had a gym? What could I do if I had someone in my corner and if I had real training instead of just being in the gym working out? So I ended up, actually going with the best gym that I could find, which is Crisp MMA. And yeah, it's been up since then, man. I lost my second fight, and it was due to me fighting at 155s, which wasn't my proper weight class. And I ended up going down to 45s for my third fight. I got another W. So yeah, man, ever since then, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to take this more serious, because if I could win my first fight as an independent fighter, then who knows what else I could do down the road.
So you started wrestling at about what age? Because you'd mentioned that you wrestled in high school.
Yeah, I was doing freestyle. I started freestyle wrestling in 6th grade. So obviously not for school. It was after 6th grade. It was the summer going into 7th grade. And then it was like the La Jolla. It was my middle school wrestling program. And I started wrestling with them for freestyle going into 7th grade. And then I did wrestling for middle school. I wrestled 7th and 8th grade. I also wrestled in between 7th and 8th grade, in between 8th grade and 9th grade, the off season summer, which is freestyle. It's a little different than the actual school wrestling program. And then, yeah, I wrestled freshman year, sophomore year, obviously in between freshman and sophomore year, the summer freestyle. And yeah, I was wrestling from about 6th grade all the way up until junior years when I stopped, because, man, I was just being a kid, like I got tired of the whole weight cutting. I got tired of like missing out on certain opportunities on the weekends. I remember, dude, it was crazy, like waking up Saturday mornings, 4 a.m, to go catch the bus to take us to Lemoore or I don't know, like Porterville, something like that, just random different cities. And I'm just fighting I'm wrestling, waking up, cutting weight as a kid. And I was like, man, I got tired of it, to be honest, but I started realizing how empty my life was without competing in general. Anything, I don't care what it was. I just not being able to compete and not having that competitive spirit in my day to day. It kind of like there was something missing in me, and I didn't realize it until like 20 years old that I was like, damn, like that's what's missing from my life. I knew something was wrong. I knew that after I stopped junior year, I was like, yeah, I was like debating on whether or not I should even get back to it my senior year. I never did. And then finally, like 20 years old, once I started getting back in the gym, feeling what my body is capable of, because I ended up putting on some weight after I stopped wrestling. I didn't like the way I felt, and it had nothing to do about the way I looked, man. I just didn't like the way I felt. Like I knew that I felt so much better as a kid when I was freshman, sophomore year. I had more energy. I was just a more capable individual, and I noticed that my physicality started falling. So once I came to 20 years old and I started working out more, I started really focusing on my health, and I was getting back in shape. I was like, this gym shit's cool and all, man, but that competitive spirit's not there in the gym. You don't have no one to compete with. There's nothing. I'm not gonna try to outlift the next guy. It's stupid. So I just wanted to get back into something that was competitive, and that was MMA. I wasn't gonna go start wrestling for a college or something, man. Like I always wanted to see what my feet and hands were capable of, because like I said, I've always had that punching bag. Or I never mentioned this, but I was watching UFC as like a middle schooler, high schooler, and like eventually in high school, my dad, when I was like a freshman, my dad got like a UFC. I still have the bag. Actually, he gave it to me. He had a UFC bag, a big old 100-pound bag, and I would just always go to work on it, man. I would always watch some fights, and then I'd go to the garage and start
It
working on the
inspired
bag.
you.
And big time, man. And I was like, dude, what am I doing? Like, even as a kid, I was thinking like I'm turning over my hips well. Like I'm over here incorporating some fairly decent kicks with some punches. And I was like, ever since high school, I was just always curious of what I was capable of if I was able to do that without any. Even when I came into Chris kickboxing, he would ask me like, you ever done taekwondo or something? Or he's like, you got that certain kind of snap in your leg, and you throw your lead leg with ease sometimes. I could see it, and I was like, no, I never did taekwondo or nothing, man. I was always on a bag as a kid, and that wrestling background helped with like my durability and my ability to, you know, be in front of a crowd, and also, you know, to be able to lose with lose with honor. And it taught me like it's all right to be able to take a loss. You know, it's a lesson learned, and wrestling taught me a lot, man, to be honest. So yeah.
Now, when you walked into Crisp MMA, what was your first experience like?
Anytime you go into a gym for the first time, and the coach probably gives them a rundown like, hey man, we got a new kid coming, because I didn't just pop in without him knowing. So it was like a couple days he got notified that I was going to be a new kid coming in, and my buddy Alex told him about me, like, hey, I got a guy, a friend of mine, who just competed at Valley Fight Series. He just won. He's an independent fighter. He was giving him the whole rundown of how I had no prior training necessarily besides wrestling, and he was just kind of like shocked and blown away. He's like, what the heck? This kid fought with no one in his corner, independent fighter. So I'm guessing he gave the people a rundown like, hey, we're gonna have a new kid coming in. And yeah, when I came in, I don't remember what kind of day it was, but if it was the first or second, I remember one of those days, the first or second or maybe third, we started sparring, and they were putting it on me, because anytime you're that new kid, they always want to put it
I
on you.
wanted to test you out.
They want to see if you're really about it, if you're going to stay,
Yeah.
because they don't want to. Yeah, they don't want to take it light on you, because that class, my coach has a couple of other independent classes during the day. Those are people that are coming in more for just cardio kickboxing. But that class that we go to at 6 p.m., that's like, those are the dogs. Those are the people who actually train and want to fight, and they have fights coming up. They're active fighters. Yeah, I just remember getting it put on me by people like Tyler, Say Lee, Shane Christie. People were just, they weren't like, they know I'm a new kid, but they're still going to put it on you, man. They want to see if you're actually about it, and if you're able to withstand that kind of pressure, and if you're going to be able to go through that kind of adversity. It doesn't matter if you're a new kid or not, man. They got to see if they got to weed out the weak, you know?
Is there anybody that you watched in the UFC that inspired you while anyone that you liked or inspired you to really kind of get in the mix? Is there anybody that style you feel like you might somewhat emulate?
Man, there was so many fighters that I looked up to whenever I was watching, but I guess the one that stands out the most is probably like Anderson Silva, is his ability to incorporate all 8 limbs. And yeah, I think as far as style wise, that was one of the biggest inspirations for sure.
Now, I know DC. I've known DC for quite some time. I've seen quite a few of his fights. Do you do everything at his gym, or is it just Muay Thai and you go somewhere else for your ground?
I'm gonna start at Elite soon. I haven't went to Elite yet. Also another financial problem, but right now we're just at I'm just at Darren's, and he primarily focuses on kickboxing and Muay Thai. Obviously, that's what he has his black belt in. I forget what he's belted in jiu-jitsu, but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, it's mostly kickboxing and Muay Thai. But Wednesdays and Fridays we incorporate, even other days too. But it just depends on if it's fight week, or I mean not fight week. If it's if fighters in camp, if there's other fighters in camp. But Wednesdays and Fridays we incorporate a lot of wrestling and jiu-jitsu on Wednesdays and Fridays. So yeah, I mean, it is a pretty well-rounded training class, but for the most part, we do focus primarily on kickboxing and Muay Thai. But like I said, Wednesdays and Fridays, we do for sure incorporate jiu-jitsu, wrestling, MMA on those days we focus on.
Now, because you're an MMA fighter, are you going to do more no-gi grappling, or are you going to put on the gi and go with it like that?
I want to do no-gi grappling, but I heard that at Elite Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, I heard at Elite, that's what they primarily use is gi. So whenever I go there, I'm going to be using the gi, unless there's certain days where they use no gi. But I'm not opposed to, to training with the gi and learning how that works too, because at the end of the day, it's all going to benefit you as a fighter. It doesn't really matter, but it's still jiu-jitsu. You're still going to be learning how to tap someone out. And yeah, I mean, like I said, if it's a mostly gi kind of training facility at Elite, that's fine. I'm going to go there regardless, because they're the best in town. They're probably the best in the 559. And yeah, I look forward to training with Elite, whether it's gi or no gi, whatever they say goes. And I'll just, listen to them.
Well, the only thing I could say about that is someone who's done gi and no gi. I'm not some black belt. Don't even get it twisted. White belt for life. But different handles. That's the thing. Different handles.
Yeah.
But so you started as an independent fighter. You are now, like, you have a team. You're trying to expand on your team. You're going to be competing in a huge card. What are your goals that you have set for yourself as it pertains to MMA?
I'm going to win this fight. And after this one, I'm going to eventually, honestly, I don't want to keep fighting at 45s, because if I get that belt at 45s, my buddy Mark Hernandez deserves that more than anyone else. And I don't want to have to defend that belt twice, because it's in their contract with 559 fights that once you're a champ, you have to defend it twice. And I'm not gonna be shooting for that belt while Mark is also shooting for that belt. So after this fight, I hope to get some respect from Jeremy, as far as who I could compete with next, another big dog, because I know that he looks at the fighters from D-Throne with a certain kind of, he gives them a lot of opportunity, and I want to be able to show him that I can compete with them. And after I take this W, I want to be able to go to 135s and start making a name for myself in that weight class. I know I said that professionally I will fight there, but it sounds like in amateurs that's also the calling for me, is because that's the move, because I'm not trying to get in Mark's way. I don't want our paths or our roads to collide when they don't need to.
Yeah, when you don't have to. I understand.
Yeah,
that.
if I'm gonna fight 135s professionally, I might as well just start doing it in amateurs, because just get used to the weight cut. Even if I don't have a whole 24 hours to rehydrate and refeed or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm gonna go through it. It's not a big deal to me. So after this fight for 145s, I will eventually be at the 135s. There's a lot of small guys at 135s and 559 fights. They don't really I don't think a lot of people do the weight cut properly. So I think I'll be a lot taller than everyone. I think I'll dominate that weight class at 559 fights. And when I do get this W and I start making my reign in 135s, I'll get that belt, defend it twice, and I'll eventually move on to whatever professional promotion wants to take me. And that's going to be that's the move for me. Is I'm looking forward to no more than 8 fights, amateur and in the amateur world. And I plan on winning all my next fights until I have 8 fights, hoping to have a belt by then. And by then I'll be out of here in professional. I don't care what promotion it is, but I hope to have at least 8 fights under my belt before I go pro.
That's actually what I was going to ask you, if you had an idea of how many fights you wanted to have before you jumped, because I know some fighters, they'd prefer to have their coach basically tell them like, okay, you're ready. And some guys are just like, when I'm ready, I'm ready. So I'm glad you added that, because it added some perspective.
Yeah.
Would you want to, like, you're competing as an amateur, would you be willing to compete pro in the Central Valley? Because Valley Fight Series, who you've competed for, is having a pro amateur show. When you decide to go pro, would you even jump on that, or are you planning on going to a different regional promotion?
Well, that Valley Fight Series promotion, when they say pro am, are they the one hosting the professionals, or is that A1 Combat?
I believe it's them, because A1 is involved with Lemoore, and the pro amateur fights for Valley Fight Series are going to take place at Table Mountain.
You said it's going to take place at Table Mountain?
Correct.
So, wow, I had no idea that. So Valley Fight Series has professional fighters?
They're going to start. Yeah, that was a big announcement for them a few weeks back. That I want to say it's in November. I don't recall what day, if it's early or mid, maybe even late, but sometime in November, they're having a pro AMI fight. And
yeah,
so
I saw that. I didn't know that they had their own professional fighters. I thought all they had was amateur fighters, and then they were collaborating with.
They could, but to my knowledge, A1 would be more associated with 559. But I could be wrong. I don't know everything behind the scenes. That's just from what I've seen.
To be honest, it's not that I'm not opposed to it, but I would like to go with wherever, because I would like to be signed by Iridium eventually. And I don't know if that's what Jeremy would want for me to fight professionally for Valley Fight Series, but I think that Jeremy is the biggest connection I have to the next level, so I just want to keep putting on a show for him and prove to him that I'm capable of, that next level. And I think that fighting for Valley Fight Series wouldn't necessarily be professionally fighting for Valley Fight Series wouldn't necessarily be the right move, because I think, and this is if it all goes well, if I get signed by Iridium, I think that Jeremy would probably prefer me fight for other promotions. I'm not sure, but whatever has the most opportunity is where I'll go, So even if down the road Valley Fight Series decides to open up more doors for me than 559 fights can, or Jeremy can, and whatever it may be, I'm not trying to be biased based on who I like more. It's just about where I think I have more. Just wherever I feel like I have more opportunity.
Wherever you get the chance.
Exactly.
No, I completely understand that. Well, Matthew, we appreciate the time. Is there anybody that you want to shout out?
Damn, man. Shout out to my coach, first and foremost. DC is always pushing us to be better. He knows what it's like to be a professional fighter. He's gone through it all. So being able to have someone that actually cares about your career is nice, man. He's not there for the buck. He's not there for the money. He's there to actually see us grow. And yeah, man, shout out to him. Shout out to the team that he's curated. Shout out to everyone in that garage, man. It's nice having Shane there. It's nice having a pro in that garage too. And then everyone else too. It's amazing working with them, man. They're all dogs. They're all hungry. And
you got the next generation of young fighters in there.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to be able to step in that garage every day and train with them. It's a blessing. And also shout out to obviously my family. It's amazing having people because not every parent wants to see their son get punched in the face, so it's nice having people that'll actually root for you. And also shout out to my friends. They're the ones who also pushed me to. I got a close group of friends who have, whenever we hang out on the weekends, they would always I'd bring it up and they would say dude, what are you waiting for? Fight already, accept the fight. What are you doing? And finances were a problem, obviously, but they just always kept telling me dude, do it. And sure enough, those same ones that would always tell me do it, they showed up to my first, my second, my third fight. So it's a blessing having, even if it's not the biggest crowd that shows up for you. Eventually I'll accrue a bigger fan base, but right now I got a good amount of friends that show up to my fights, and it's a blessing having at least someone there in a portion of the crowd rooting for you.
I understand that. You could see Matthew Wildchild Martinez compete at 559 Fights 100 in Visalia Convention Center coming up this next weekend. Me and my co-host have always talked positively about 559 Fights. It's such an amazing show. And for folks that are fight fans that haven't been, you need to go, especially to 100. They made it to 100. A lot of them don't make it past 12. So it's definitely the show to see. Matthew, thank you for joining me. I wish you the best of luck on your fight and your career. And I look forward to talking to you again. And all right, everybody, have a good one.
Thank you for having me.